to this computer because I don't know where recording to the cloud is. All right, we are recording. We are ready to rock and roll. Take it away, Dennis.
Hi, everybody. My name's Dennis Hansen. I got into fermenting several years back. I just kind of stumbled into it. Wine is fermented, so I knew a little bit about that, but lactic acid fermentation of food it's just a lost art and science. And a lot of people don't realize that that's how we used to preserve all of our food before refrigeration. So pepperoni and the dried salamis, they're fermented.
Okay.
So that's why they can last outside of a refrigerator. The lactic acid protects it, and it doesn't allow anything bad bacteria to grow in it. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about the difference between pickled and fermented.
Okay.
So pickled is where what we know today as today's pickles that we buy in the store, and they're vinegar preserved. But the problem with store-bought pickles is the vinegar's been pasteurized, so it doesn't have it's not raw, it doesn't have live culture in it unless you buy something like this. So this, I don't know if you guys can see it.
Yeah.
This is the Brad raw, unfiltered, unpasteurized with the mother. This still actually has live bacteria in it. And that's a different kind than what's in lactic acid fermentation. But that's that. So that's how pickles are made. Fermented pickles or lacto fermented pickles are just cucumbers, and you make them the same way. You put whatever dill pickling seasoning or whatever you want in it, and dill sprigs, and you put your brine in it, and you put a lid on it, and you set it on your counter, and you let it ferment. And I know it kind of freaks a lot of people out because they're like, oh my God, how can you let food sit out on your counter? It's going to go bad and kill me. Well, once the fermentation starts, and it starts because of the bacteria that's on the outside of the fruit, so of the vegetable. So you can't heat it, you can't pasteurize it or anything because it'll kill that, and then then it will rot. So as long as it has that live bacteria on it naturally, and you put it in the brine, the fermentation starts. And I got a couple notes that I took so I could remember to talk about these. So the great thing about fermented foods is they're really rich in probiotics because they contain live strains of beneficial bacteria that are good for your guts. Let's see, fermented foods are rich in probiotic bacteria. So when you consume fermented foods, you're adding beneficial bacteria and enzymes to your overall intestinal flora. Okay, so every time you take an antibiotic, you kill all that, and we don't really put it back. So eating fermented foods is great. Now, with this garlic, when you cook with it, obviously you're going to kill the live culture in it. But if you use the juice in salad dressings, or even in raw, you use the garlic in raw salads or whatever, you're still getting that benefit. So anyway, and the process of fermentation is basically a form of pre-digestion. And what it does is it during the fermentation process, the lactic acid takes over and starts to eat the sugars and the starches in the vegetable, and it'll actually cause CO2. Your ferment will be sitting there on your counter bubbling. That's why you can't put a tight lid on it, because it'll blow the jar up.
Okay.
The same way with, if you bottle wine too soon, it'll blow the corks out because it's not done creating with all that CO2 going away. And during this process, during this digestion process, it liberates like vitamins and minerals, or it pulls them away from things that bind to them. So a good example of something that does that is legumes. They say like beans and stuff like that have a lot of iron and zinc in them. They do, but you just can't get it. because the phytic acid in those beans and stuff bind that iron and zinc, so it just passes. You never absorb it in through your intestines, and you don't ever get it. So it's not true that it is there, but you just don't get it. So when you ferment, especially legumes, but other things, it actually breaks this stuff down and makes all the nutrients of the food much more absorbable for your body, or bioavailable. So you actually get much more nutrients out of fermented food, plus all of the good stuff for your guts. And everybody, now we know that our gut and our brain talk. So when you have a healthy gut, you have a healthy brain. So it's just fermented foods. I can't say enough about how good they are for you, and they're delicious. Some of them are a little tough. I mean, there's some fermented fish things, and sometimes kimchi is pretty strong, but that's all fermented. I mean, sauerkraut's fermented, not the store-bought kind. That's still, I don't know what they do to it, but it doesn't have live bacteria in it. Neither does store-bought yogurt. Yogurt's fermented, sour cream's fermented, cheese is fermented. So a lot of things that we don't even think about are actually fermented foods.
Huh.
What about Greek yogurt? That's generally pretty good for the gut flora, right?
It's good for you, but they pasteurize it. So they bring it above 140 degrees, and that kills all the live culture in it.
That's right. You need like kefir.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Now, kefir, if you get kefir or raw, make sure it's not, it's got to be unpasteurized, because if it's pasteurized, it's killed. But if it says raw, natural, like if you get it at if you get it at the Walmart or whatever, they don't normally have the natural stuff. But if you go to a natural grocers or a health food store, you can normally find the raw kefir. And there's water kefir, milk kefir. I mean, there's a lot of drink, kvass. There's all kinds of stuff they make. Over in like Russia, they make a fermented drink out of fermenting bread. It's crazy all the stuff there is. But so anyway, I'll talk a little bit about what we use to ferment. So today we're just going to ferment in a quart jar. No big deal. We're not going to need any of this other stuff, but there's a few things that can help you out if you ever do want to get into fermenting, like other vegetables. So this is a fermentation weight. This is a glass weight. Like garlic won't float, but if you're doing, let's say you want to do salsa or other vegetables, they have a tendency to float. So you just put this glass, after you put your brine in, you put this glass weight on there. It keeps everything down under the surface of the water. And the importance of that is because although you're not going to get any kind of botulism growing in here or anything, it will produce mold. And actually, that's not dangerous either. It's unsightly unless it's black mold. But if you can just take the mold off the top, and it's still good, but people don't like to see it, and it does look a little gross. So this is just another type of glass weight without a handle on it. These are fermentation lids. So what these are like one-way lids. They'll let the CO2 escape, but they won't let oxygen in. So, and the main purpose of that is mold has to have oxygen to grow. So when this is on the jar and all that CO2 is going in there, once it fills the jar with CO2 and pushes all the oxygen out, there is no oxygen left in the jar, so mold can't grow at all. And then this is a tool that comes with these lids, so that if you take the lid off to test your ferment, when you put the lid back on, you give it a couple pumps, it sucks all the air out, so you're back into an environment that doesn't have oxygen in it.
Cool.
Also, I mean, you can use anything for a weight. I've seen people use plates. I just went out and got rocks and boiled them and sterilized rocks. Rocks work. They make great weights. Okay, you can, I mean, you just don't want to use anything metal, anything plastic, or anything like that. And you don't ever want to ferment in metal or plastic. Always in glass or like this is a 3-gallon fermenting crock, specifically designed for fermenting. And so this is great for pickles and sauerkraut. But it has this ring right here. When you put the lid on, you fill this with water, and then that allows the CO2 to escape through the water, but the oxygen can't get back in. And then it also comes with these ceramic weights that you put inside. So if you're doing pickles or sauerkraut, this will keep everything weighted down. So there's they ferment in like wine barrels. You could ferment in a wine barrel. I don't know. You could, people did pickles in old wooden barrels forever, and sauerkraut. So let's see. So one other thing I want to talk about before we start, I want to show you a couple of mine that I got going here. So one thing you're going to see when you ferment, your brine will get cloudy. Okay, that's completely natural. That is some of the yeasts that grow in there. So this garlic is cloudy, and that's completely normal. It's not bad. Don't be scared of it. Now this one's not as cloudy, but I haven't started using this one yet. So once I shake it up and start moving it around, it'll get cloudy. That's just some of the natural yeasts and stuff that grow in there, and it all adds flavor to it. It's really good. And also they might get darker, which is fine, and they might get darker on the ends or whatever. That's all fine. You'll know when you're fermenting food, you'll know when it goes bad. But I've never had a batch of anything go bad. So, and it's I don't know, it's actually safer than home canning. I know that's one, but once that lactic acid starts in there, nothing but beneficial stuff can grow in it, period. It just can't. It drops the pH down to about 4 to 5, and nothing can grow in there bad. So it's all, and there have been people, so there's restaurants and stuff that are starting to ferment and do that. There's one specifically in San Francisco, and I guess the health department freaked out when they found out they were doing that. And they had to just take them in and teach them and show them, look, this is absolutely safe. So they're still, they got it. They're still doing it.
Cool.
So when you use some of your fermented garlic, do you go ahead and pump it out once you replace the lid?
No, on the garlic, I don't, because garlic, I don't worry about molding at all, because it just doesn't. I mean, it's nothing. I don't know if it's because of something in the garlic. It just doesn't grow in garlic. And of course, this method, if you don't have to have those lids. So this is just taking a regular canning jar, put a coffee filter on it, and screw a band on it, and that's perfectly suitable. And then this is the same thing with just a rubber band. So it's a coffee filter, paper towel, whatever. You don't want to set them in direct sunlight, but your room temperature, the warmer it is, the faster the ferment will go. And the warmer it is, you may get a little more yeast buildup in it, but that's perfectly fine. Don't be afraid of that. And once you taste it, you'll be hooked. It's incredible. So what it's going to take about, at least 2 weeks.
Okay.
But one thing that garlic does that a lot of other stuff doesn't do is it doesn't, like if you did pickles or zucchini or something like that and you left it on your counter for without putting it in a refrigerator to slow the fermentation process down, they would get soft and mushy. The garlic, I just leave this on my counter. I don't refrigerate it. I just leave it on the counter. This has been this is 3, 4 months, 5 months, and it's perfectly fine. I ate it. I made chili with it today. So, but I think, yeah, I talked about no metal or plastic. So yeah, I think we're ready to start if you guys are ready.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so for garlic, we're going to use a 2% brine solution. And there's several ways to do it. The way I like to do it is I'll use 1,000 milliliters of water, right? Which is 4 cups. But if you do it in milliliters, it's easy to do. And then I need 20 grams of salt. That makes a 2% solution. Because 1,000 milliliters of water is right at about 1,000 grams of water. So 2% of that would be 20. So 20 grams of, but I'm going to show you. So I got my regular kitchen scale here. I just tare weight it. I'm going to use pink Himalayan sea salt because we buy it in bulk because that's all we use. So, and one full tablespoon is right on 20 grams. So this is a full tablespoon. So you can use tablespoons. This isn't an exact science. It doesn't have to be, but that's right on 20 grams right there, 1 tablespoon. So, and if you don't, you could use 4 cups of water and 1 tablespoon of salt, and that would be a 20%, 2% solution. So now pickles and stuff, you'll use 3.5 to 5% solution. Other things use different solutions. The garlic, I like the 2% solution because you don't have to worry about mold. The higher the brine solution, the more it inhibits the mold. But in the garlic, you just don't have to worry about it. So get some water here. So I'm not going to fill mine all the way up just yet. So I'm going to pour my salt in there. Then I'm going to, because it's only a 4-cup deal. So and I'm just going to whisk the salt around a little bit to get it dissolved. And you don't want to put hot water in these because, yeah, don't ever use hot water. And you can't use chlorinated water either. So if you're using city water, you either need to use distilled water or tap or well water. So I got well water here, but because the chlorine in city water will kill the bacteria, the natural bacteria on the vegetable or fruit you're fermenting, and it'll never take. So always remember, never chlorinated water. If you're going to use city water, you can boil it and then let it cool off, or even put it in a pitcher and let it set for a couple of days, because the chlorine will gas off eventually and it'll all evaporate. But you want to make sure that you don't put that in there, because that'll do it in. So once you got your brine made, and that's 2%, that you can taste it. It's pretty salty, but I like when I do pickles, I like salty pickles. So I will do 5% brine in pickles. And I do 3.5% brine too, but so all you got to do pour the brine over the garlic. And of course, my garlic this time is floating. Would have to do that. Is yours floating? Have you poured your water in yet?
It's not covering it up yet.
Not quite.
Dissolving the salt still. Looks like it's floating a bit. Quick, go boil a rock.
Boil a rock.
I feel like we have something that can work
You
as
don't
a
have to worry about it right now. It won't. It takes several days, and like I said, I'm not even sure that. I think that the garlic, just what it is, inhibits the mold.
Mhm.
So, and then you just put your whatever kind of a lid you're going to put on it. And so all of this stuff, you can get all of this on Amazon or eBay. This company is called Nourished Essentials, and this is the one they sell like a starter kit. It comes with 3 lids, 3 glass weights, and the pump, and I don't know, maybe something else, and it's like $27 or something like that. But that's it. I mean, after a couple days, you'll see bubbles. You'll see it. You go over and tap the jar like that, and bubbles will just. And that's all the CO2 escaping out of there. That you know that when you see those bubbles, you got a good ferment started. So it's doing its thing.
Nice. Ooh, Nikki just dropped, or Rose just dropped in the chat a link to the Amazon fermenter if anybody wants a fermenting kit.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
It's on sale, 3 for $26.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Perfect.
And I will do this as many times as anybody wants. If we want, one other of my fermented dishes that I really, really love is red chili sauce. It's easy, and I think if you guys like salsa and chili sauce and stuff, you would love this. It's super easy to make. It's just, I mean, whatever kind of, however hot you want to make it, just cut up some tomatoes, some onions, some garlic, and some peppers, and you can even put like some powdered cayenne pepper in it if you want to make it a little hotter. But if you want it mild, and you can put, just for flavor, you can put like bell peppers in there, a couple chunks of bell pepper, and then some jalapenos, and maybe a serrano or whatever, any kind of peppers you want. And it makes, so you ferment it for 2 weeks to a month till you get it, and you taste it. You just taste the brine that's in it. And when you think it's where you like it, you just basically take all the veggies out, put them in a blender, and you blend it. You just puree it, and then you thin it with the brine. So if you want it super thick, you don't put any brine in it. If you want it thin, you add some brine to it. And it lasts for, let me see. Because I'm almost out. So but you can see this is a quart. This lasted me 6 months.
Mm.
And that's just red chili sauce. And I use it on bread, omelets, eggs, quesadillas. Man, that stuff's good.
Nice.
I think we need to ferment all the things, Dave.
Yeah. Is that what you want to do?
We've got 4 more jars.
Yeah, I have a lot of jars. You do. All right. I'm going to stop recording so people can ask questions and do whatever. Drink wine.
Drink wine.